When my sister announced she'd chosen the exact same wedding date as mine, my parents laughed like it was harmless. Then they made their choice. They would attend hers, and not mine. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask them to reconsider. I smiled, stayed silent, and let them believe I was still the easy one. What they never noticed was that I wasn't stepping aside, I was stepping back to watch. Because on the day of the wedding, when they finally realized what their decision had cost them, there was nothing left to fix. There was laughter first. Not the warm kind. More like the sound people make when they think something is clever. My mother's glass chimed against the table as she set it down, and my father leaned back in his chair, smiling as if he'd just heard a joke meant only for him. "It's funny how things work out," my sister Lila said lightly. "Same day as Pearl's." The word same landed between us like a dropped plate. I felt it, sharp and sudden. But I didn't flinch. I kept my posture relaxed, my fingers loosely wrapped around my napkin. My mother looked at me then, eyebrows raised, not in concern, but expectation. "You don't mind," she said. Not a question. A conclusion. Lila tilted her head, watching me through her lashes. She always did that when she wanted something from me. When she wanted me to disappear quietly. I smiled once. Small. Polite. "No," I said. "It's fine." Relief washed over the table. My father nodded, satisfied, already moving on. Lila's lips curved, not grateful, just triumphant. They mistook calm for consent. They always had. I learned very young that silence could keep you safe. I was 7 the first time I noticed it. Lila stood on the front lawn in a pastel dress my mother had ironed twice, the hem brushing her knees. A photographer adjusted his lens while my mother crouched, fixing Lila's curls. "Smile bigger," Mom said softly. "You're beautiful." I stood in the doorway behind them, my backpack already on, my lunch packed by myself because Mom had been busy that morning. I waited. For a glance. A word. Nothing. When the camera clicked, everyone clapped. I closed the door quietly and walked to school alone. After that, I became careful. Observant. I learned when to speak and when not to. Mostly not. In school I worked hard, not because anyone asked me to, but because achievement felt like proof I existed. I brought home straight A's, awards, certificates with gold seals. My father would glance at them briefly before saying, "Don't rub it in your sister's face." So I stopped bringing them out. I folded the papers and tucked them into drawers. I folded my excitement the same way. Lila didn't have to earn anything. When she struggled, the teachers were wrong. When she succeeded, it was destiny. She was talented, special, radiant. I was dependable. That word followed me everywhere. "You're so reliable, Pearl," my mother would say when she needed help cleaning or organizing or babysitting. "Unlike your sister, you don't complain." It never sounded like praise. On my 12th birthday, the cake had both our names on it. "We thought it would be easier," Mom said, already cutting slices. 2 birds with 1 stone. Lila blew out the candles before I could lean forward. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. A half-second late. I always made sure my timing was right. By high school, I'd learned not to want things out loud. The one time I did, I paid for it. I told Lila I liked a boy from my chemistry class. Just told her. Quietly. While we were sitting on her bed and she was painting her nails. She smiled and said nothing. The next week, she posted pictures of them together. When I cried, my mother sighed heavily. "You're too sensitive," she said. "Men like confidence. You should work on that." That night, I decided never to give anyone ammunition again. College was never discussed for me. Lila needed support. Lila needed tuition. Lila needed time to find herself. I found a job instead. An administrative position at a mid-sized consulting firm in Boston. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And stability felt like oxygen. I moved out at 23 into a small apartment with beige walls and a view of another building's brick side. I bought a planner and wrote everything down. Dates, tasks, names. Memory could be rewritten. Ink couldn't. Lila called occasionally, not to ask how I was, but to update me on her life. New car. New apartment. New engagement ring. My parents adored the stories. You should take notes, my mother once said fondly. Your sister knows how to live. I nodded. Silence kept things smooth. But silence doesn't mean emptiness. It means space. And in that space I noticed things. I noticed patterns. Who was invited where? Who mattered to whom? I noticed how my parents' social world overlapped with Lila's, and how mine quietly extended elsewhere, through work, through consistency, through trust earned slowly. By the time I met Daniel, I was already very good at waiting. He was calm, observant. He listened without interrupting. When I spoke, he didn't rush to fill the pauses. That mattered more than romance. When he proposed, it was simple. Just us, no audience. We chose a date 6 months out. A Saturday in early fall. I wrote it into my planner in blue ink and circled it carefully. Confirmed. When Lila announced her engagement 2 weeks later, my parents were ecstatic. When she announced her date, my date, they were amused. She probably didn't even realize, my father said, chuckling. Lila met my eyes across the table. She realized. Later that night, my mother called. Her venue is bigger, she said, as if explaining whether. Most people will go there. You can always do something small. Maybe a brunch after. That's okay, I said. She exhaled in relief. You're such a good sport, Perl. I hung up and opened my planner. 2 identical dates stared back at me. I didn't erase mine. I underlined it. The next morning, I went to work early. The office was quiet, lights still dimmed. I liked it that way. I logged into the internal system and opened a draft email. I didn't send it. I saved it. By noon, I'd called our event coordinator. Yes, I said. Same date. She hesitated. Your family mentioned another wedding. I'm aware, I said gently. We'll need the larger hall. There was a pause. Of course, Ms. Hale. That night, I told Daniel everything. Not emotionally. Just facts. He listened. Then nodded. If they chose sides, he said, let them live with it. We upgraded nothing flashy. Just intentional. Lighting. Sound. Seating. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted clarity. Over the following weeks, I worked quietly. I finalized guest lists. Not family-heavy. Professional. People who knew me not as Lila's sister, but as myself. Mentors. Colleagues. Clients. Every RSVP was a small confirmation of something I'd built without them. My mother called often. She's stressed, she said. You'll help, right? I'll be busy, I replied. She didn't ask how. The night before the wedding, I laid my dress across the bed and closed my planner. For the first time, I slept without setting an alarm. Outside, the city was quiet. Waiting. The morning of the wedding arrived without ceremony. No nerves. No racing heart. Just a clean, steady quiet that settled over everything like fresh snow. I woke before dawn, the city still dark, streetlights humming softly below my window. For a moment, I stayed still, listening to my own breathing. Even. Controlled. This was the kind of calm I'd spent my whole life learning how to build. I dressed slowly. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to feel every step of it. The weight of the fabric as I lifted the dress. The cool click of the zipper. The mirror reflecting a woman who looked composed, not fragile. Present. Daniel watched from the doorway, already dressed, his tie loose around his neck. You okay? He asked. Yes, I said honestly. I've never been more sure of anything. He smiled, not wide, just enough. He trusted me. That mattered. The hotel was already awake when we arrived. Staff moved efficiently, voices low, clipboards tucked under arms. The scent of polished floors and fresh flowers lingered in the air. 2 signs stood near the elevators. Grand Ballroom, Perl and Daniel Hale. Lakeside Hall, Lila and Marcus. Same building. Same day. 2 different worlds. Our coordinator greeted me with a nod. Everything is on schedule, she said. Guests are arriving early. Good, I replied. I didn't ask about the other hall. I didn't need to. By 11:30, the Grand Ballroom was filling. Not loudly. Respectfully. Conversations held at a measured volume. Suits and dresses I recognized from conference rooms and board meetings. People who knew me as capable, thorough, dependable, but not invisible. I took my place near the side entrance, just before the ceremony was set to begin. And that was when I saw them. My parents arrived together, my mother scanning the room with polite confusion, my father already stiffening as he took in the scene. Lila followed behind them, radiant and sharp all at once, her smile faltering when she noticed the crowd. She stopped walking. "What is this?" she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. Marcus stood beside her, adjusting his cufflinks, his brow creasing. "Why are so many people here?" My mother looked around, eyes darting. "This must be overflow." No one answered her. They hadn't expected this. They'd expected folding chairs. A modest room. A quiet afterthought. Not this. Not me. Daniel's father, Richard Hale, stood from his seat near the front as they entered. He was calm, dignified, his presence commanding without effort. Several heads turned instinctively toward him. "Welcome," he said evenly. "I believe you're early for the wrong ceremony." The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. My father cleared his throat. We were told that both weddings were today," Richard finished. "Yes. I'm aware." Silence spread outward, clean and unmistakable. Lila's face flushed. "Why are all my guests here?" she hissed, her composure cracking. "These people are supposed to be at my wedding." Marcus looked around again, realization dawning slowly. "These are my firm's partners," he said under his breath. "And clients." Richard tilted his head slightly. Attendance was confirmed weeks ago. Prior commitments were made. My mother laughed nervously. "This must be some kind of misunderstanding." "No," Richard said gently. "It's scheduling." I stepped forward then. Not dramatically. Just enough to be seen. "Hi," I said. Every eye turned to me. Lila stared as if seeing me for the first time. "You didn't tell me," she said. I met her gaze calmly. "You didn't ask." The ceremony music began softly, right on cue. The string quartet didn't hesitate. Neither did the guests, who resumed their seats as if nothing had happened, because for them, nothing had. This was where they were meant to be. My father's face tightened. "Pearl," he said sharply. "We need to talk." "After," I replied. "I'm getting married." And then I walked past them, down the aisle I had chosen, toward the life I had built quietly, deliberately, without permission. The vows were simple, honest. The kind that don't need an audience to be real. When Daniel said my name, it didn't feel borrowed or secondhand. It felt claimed. The applause afterward wasn't explosive. It was steady, full, earned. As the guests stood, I saw Lila through the glass doors leading to the courtyard. She was pacing now, phone pressed to her ear, her veil slipping loose. Marcus stood apart, his posture rigid, jaw clenched. Half an hour later, as our reception began, they came back inside. Not invited. They hovered near the entrance, uncertain, exposed. The contrast was undeniable, our room full, warm with conversation and light. Theirs, somewhere down the hall, quiet and stalled. My mother's eyes filled with tears, not from emotion, but confusion. "How did this happen?" she whispered. I didn't answer. Marcus turned to Lila, his voice low but tense. "You told me this was a power move. That she'd step aside." Lila's voice shook. "She always does. Not this time." Richard stood again, drawing the room's attention effortlessly. "Let's be clear," he said. "No one was taken from another event. People chose where to be." His gaze settled briefly on my parents. "Choices have consequences." The words settled like dust. My father looked at me then, really looked at me. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. "Perl," he said quietly. "We didn't know." I took a breath. "You didn't ask." Staff approached smoothly, professionally. "May we help you find your way?" One of them asked my family. There was no anger in the tone, just boundary. They were escorted out without resistance. As the doors closed, the quartet began again, seamless, controlled. The room exhaled. Daniel took my hand. "You okay?" "Yes," I said. And I meant it. Across the hall, faintly, I heard raised voices, then nothing. The rest of the evening passed gently. Conversations flowed. Laughter rose and fell. No speeches. No spectacle. Just presence. When the last guest left, I stood alone for a moment beneath the chandeliers. Their light reflected cleanly in the polished floor. No distortion. No cracks. The silence felt complete. The next morning, the city looked different. Not brighter. Just clearer. I stood in our kitchen, barefoot, coffee warming my hands. Daniel slept in the other room, the quiet of his breathing steady and grounding. On the table lay my planner, closed now. Beside it, our marriage certificate. I thought of Lila waking up to unanswered messages. Of my parents sitting at their kitchen table, replaying moments they dismissed for years. I didn't feel triumph. I felt distance. And distance, I'd learned, can be a form of peace. I opened the planner one last time and drew a line beneath the final entry. Wedding. Completed. Then I closed it. Silence, I understood now, isn't weakness. It's restraint. It's patience. It's the power to wait until the moment speaks for you. And when it does, everyone hears it. Moral lessons. This story is a reminder that silence is not weakness when it's chosen, and patience is not surrender when it's purposeful. You don't have to fight for every seat at tables where you were never valued. Sometimes the strongest response is to build your own and let absence speak for itself. Favoritism, entitlement, and neglect don't disappear when you tolerate them. They only end when you draw boundaries without apology. If you've spent years being overlooked, underestimated, or asked to shrink for someone else's comfort, know this: your worth does not need their recognition to be real. Choose dignity over desperation, clarity over chaos, and trust that quiet consistency has a way of rewriting endings in your favor.